Hello and welcome back. So what we're going to do is carry on with the tutorial and actually get into modeling something. And this is what you would normally see for my landing desktop when I come into Onshape with my Learn Onshape account. The previous one was just me setting things up, so I just wanted to let you guys see what it looked like when you just get started. Once you've built some files and you've got some stuff, you'll end up seeing stuff like this. What we're going to try to build, and I've seen in the past, is the leatherman tread, or at least a 3D printable version of the leatherman tread. Saw this a few years ago, thought it was pretty cool, wanted one. Then I looked at the price tag and went, nah, I don't think so. 3D printing one is not that hard, and what you end up with is I made it so that we could not necessarily 3D print the bits, is make bit holders. We're not going to have these, or we could put them in, but we'll see about doing that maybe later on in the tutorial series. What I ended up creating was this guy. And we've got these, each little sort of tread piece and arms, and we can insert the bits, and then we put everything together in assembly, and here's what I ended up 3D printing. Here's a good example of what it looks like with the larger bits that you can get for a screwdriver. Again, the same from the top, and the little tiny bits, so you can get some of the jeweler's bits as well. So let's get into this. So we need to create a document. So remember I was telling you before, you want to create a document. Come in here, hit create, and we'll call this one the belt. Seeing as using the tread might be something of a copyright infringement or something, I'm not too sure, but we'll call ours the belt. We've landed here, and like I did before, is that we have the top and right planes. I don't necessarily want to see them, so we're just going to come in here and hide the top plane and hide the right plane. We're going to leave the origin and the front plane there, and we can always go to the front views and everything here, so might as well just go to the front view. And from this, what I'm going to start doing is a sketch. So we're going to select the front plane, the plane that you want to sketch on. And in this case, you can actually select on solid geometry for planes, as long as it's a flat plane to sketch on. But obviously we don't have one here, so we're going to start with a plane. And I recommend that everybody starts and uses planes for geometry, because if a face disappears or is deleted, then it becomes hard for the system to figure things out. But we're going to stay on the front plane. We're going to sketch. And the first thing we're going to do is that there's two holes at a certain distance apart. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think it's about a centimeter or so. And we can always vary that, but we're going to create a line. So we go on here and you can hit the L key. So there are a bunch of keyboard shortcuts with this. You could hit the L button on your keyboard and create a line, or you can click on the icon to create a line. But one thing you can also do is just hover the mouse over the line, and it will describe how it all works. So in this case, we're just going to create a line. I'm going to create it out in the middle of nowhere. And we're going to make sure that it's level. You'll notice that when you pause, it will level itself out and snap to the horizon. And once we're done that, I'm going to hit escape. There's a bunch of things that you can do with sketches, and part of being really good at doing sketches is to make sure that all the lines end up being black. And you notice that this is a blue line. That means it's unconstrained. It's kind of floating in space, and you can move it around if you click and drag it. And you don't want to have that. What I want to do is I want to have some references as to how long it's going to be and where it's located in space. And that's where these guys come up. These are kind of like mates or constraints. A lot of people, mates are generally in assemblies. Constraints are for sketches and in parts. In this case, I recommend you go through a lot of these and just mouse over, and I'll let you know. Midpoint constraint is you pre-select sketch entities and then select the midpoint constraint, or where you want the midpoint to be, and then go from there. So what I'm going to show you here is that we're going to select the line, going to select the point, and then we're going to hit midpoint. So what that has done is you'll notice that the line is black, but the two dots on the end are blue. So it's constrained to the origin. It's horizontal. There's these little guys here. So you can see that line there saying that it's horizontal. When we drew it, it automatically added that constraint. You can get rid of it if you need to by hitting delete. And then there's the midpoint constraint that we added. Now, to get those two blue dots to constrain themselves and be black, we need a distance. Now, again, you can come up and hit the dimension up here in the constraints. Just a second ago, I hit the D key, and that changed the icon because basically the D key is a quick key to that. And you can see we've got that, and that is at 2 inches. So let's just put 2 inches there, hit enter, and you can see that everything's black and everything's good. Now, this isn't a line that we actually want to use for the model itself. We want to use this as more reference geometry as to where the two holes belong on the part. So I'm going to select that line. and I'm going to convert it to construction geometry, or a dashed line. So that means it's being ignored for making solid models or some of the bosses, but it can be used for some reference information. And we're going to dimension this out properly in just a few moments, but I'm just going to show you guys what we can do with this. Now, we're going to have a couple of holes. What I ended up using is M3 screws, but I find that 440 and M3 screws in a 3D print, if you print it out the right size and you have the hole size the right way, that you can screw things into it straight and the screws will tap themselves into it. So in this case, it can be 440 or M3. I'll get that dimension here just shortly. We've got those two circles there, but we want, if I come in and I start dimensioning things and I dimension this hole and then I dimension this hole, what will end up happening is that it's a bit of a problem, because if I change this dimension, it doesn't change that dimension, but these both are exactly the same. And there's a solution to that. So we can select on that circle, we can select on that circle, and we again come up to the constraints and we can make them both equal. So now these are both the equal size, and now we only have to dimension one of them. And I'm going to say, I can't remember, it's a number 43 drill bit that I need to use for something like this, but we're just going to say 0.25. Again, these are not the correct dimensions for what we need. We're going to modify this just shortly. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is that we have these two screws and we need some plastic, sort of like these will be the holes. And you'll notice right here, if we zoom in, if you notice when I zoom in here, there's a dark gray area contained within that solid circle. And that means that there's an enclosed space that you can extrude. So I'm just going to zoom back out a little bit. And this is sort of a little more of an advanced sort of trick, but we're still going to play with it, is that we're going to create a slot. And the reason why we're going to create a slot is it's a slot feature, but it's not really what we're going to be using it for. We're going to use it for the solid body. So we're going to say slot, and we're going to select that line. And you'll notice that it offsets everything and gives you two rounded ends. So this is to our advantage as far as not having to draw a bunch of circles and lines. We can just sort of offset everything really quickly. Now I'm going to double click on that dimension. I'm going to say 0.75. And again, these are not the dimensions that we're going to finally use. So now we've got this sort of boss, and this would be the two screws that we need to have, or the area that we need to have for the two screws. So let's just take a quick look at the preview. And you'll notice, I should have taken a side view. So there's this boss here that comes all the way along here. And when I say boss, I mean a solid. So to make a solid, I'll generally call it a boss. It's kind of an industry standard thing. So there will be the first screw hole here and the second screw hole here, and it's extruded out. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to rotate it around a little bit so you can see better. And then we're going to hit the extrude, or we can hit Shift E to get the keyboard shortcut. And this brings up a new dialog, and it's going to show us, it automatically picked out the areas that it figured that we needed. So the outside extrusion area and then the two holes end up getting left behind. Now, this is okay, but if you wanted to actually use those holes for the extrude, is that you can rotate around and you can actually select on the sketch area of the hole, and you'll notice that it adds it to and closes off that area. And up in here, it says faces and sketch regions to extrude. So you can have kind of a messy sketch and still get sort of the regions that you need. But we'll come into that maybe a little later. I'm going to deselect that hole so we actually have that come in. Now you have a bunch of choices on what you can do as far as making the boss. Now I like to keep things symmetrical across all the planes. That's if it's possible. Not everything's possible to do that. So in this case, I want it symmetrical about the front. We want it to extrude on both sides. And there are a couple ways you can do it. You can do a blind extrude 1 inch out one direction, like that. Then you can do a second end position if it's not symmetrical, and you can say, hey, I want to go 1 inch out the other way. Now that can be a bit of a pain, because then you have to change 2 dimensions if you need to come in and edit, which we're going to do here shortly once we get all the dimensions that we need. In this case, you can do a symmetric extrude. And when you do that, that's 1 inch in between those two. In this case, let's just say that it's 2 inches. And we know that this is all these dimensions are wrong, but it's kind of getting us started, right? So now that we've got all this, I can say, okay, and it creates that solid. And that solid is right here, and it's called extrude. So let's just hide the front plane so we can see things a little better. And we can rotate around a little bit, maybe hit here to get a good view. So there you go. This is your first solid that you've created. Now, I didn't write out the dimensions that should have been used in this, and there's a good reason for it. In the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to cover how to change the dimensions in the sketches and get back in there and edit them. So now we've got kind of like the rough shape of the first part, we can always come back and resize it. In the meantime, if you hit like on the video below and subscribe to this channel would come in awesome, or even better is to go to learnonshape.com and sign up for our newsletter, and I'll make sure that you guys know about any videos that come out that are free here in the next little bit. Talk to you on the next video.